The first signs of new leaf are found in the air. The warmth of the sun growing stronger, the sense of new buds and plant growth, and of course, the sounds of tiny creatures scurrying across the ground and small birds fluttering about are more common. Soon the world will be overflowing with life. That's why they call it New Leaf, even the rogues and kitty pets. There was still some time left before the changing of seasons was to come, but Dofreckle could swear she saw the signs. Not in the air, but in her clan. The camp was in good shape. The cats had adjusted to day-to-day life. The medicine stores and fresh kill pile were being kept up well enough for Leaf Bear. Honey Mask, Lynx Claw, and Maple Leaf were good warriors. Ice Paw was a wonderful apprentice, and they couldn't have asked for a better medicine cat in Mottled Tuft. All they needed now was a leader and a deputy. "Dofreckle, are you all right?" Shadeheart mewed as she padded into the medicine den. She purred in response, lifting her head as high as she could. "Don't be so sour. I can want to see you for good reasons, can't I?" Shadeheart didn't seem comforted. "Sorry. It's just been quiet all Leaf Bear. I feel like there's always a storm on the horizon. You'll drive yourself mad always waiting for something bad to happen. Enjoy the peace a while," Dofreckle advised, slowly letting her head rest on her nest of moss. The large black she-cat tucked her tail tightly around her paws. "I'll try. How are you anyway? Did those new herbs help?" She laughed weakly. "That's more of a Mottled Tuft question." "You know how you're feeling better than she does," Shadeheart retorted, her ears spinning back. "I'm fine," Dofreckle insisted, drawing in a long, deep breath. "There's something more important we need to talk about." Shadeheart bristled. "What's more important than your health?" "The clan needs a leader. We have to pick someone and send them to the Moon Hollow," she replied. "Done. You'll be leader, and you'll go when you're well," Shadeheart mewed curtly. Dofreckle sighed. "Shade, we've talked about this. You're the one who wanted to start a clan. You're the one with the most experience with clan things. It's the natural choice," she argued. Drawing up all the strength she had, Dofreckle gazed right into her friend's gray eyes. "I know you don't want to accept it, Shadeheart, but I'm not going to live much longer." "You can't!" she snapped, but Dofreckle went on. "I've been sick all my life. Ofleck never expected me to reach warrior age, let alone live as long as I have. There's no cure for me. I'm getting worse, and it's only a matter of time. That's why I want to be sure that you'll all be okay when I go to StarClan." Her voice choked up as she passed her limits and dissolved into a coughing fit. "I'm sorry. Don't stress yourself, please. I'm sorry. Just please don't leave, please." She rubbed her face against Dofreckle's and purred loudly as her labored, wheezing breath eased slowly. "Shadeheart," she murmured. "Please, take care of them. Like you took care of me." The elder she-cat gave her ear a careful lick. "If that's what you want, but let's not bring it up to the others yet." Dofreckle knew she was holding out on the hope that her health would improve with the weather, only agreeing to make her happy. The rest of Leaf Bear went by slowly, and yet all too fast. Green grass, briars, and herbs began to break through the thinning layer of snow. The beginnings of new life and rejuvenation were all around, but RougeClan's first new leaf greeted them with a loss. Long before the sun would rise, Mottled Tuft silently ventured out of her den. At times like this, she always felt the weight of her years, the ache in her joints and the weariness of her body. Lynx Claw was sitting at the camp entrance, standing guard. The medicine cat caught his gaze, and he tilted his head in a silent question. Mottled Tuft gestured towards the warrior's den in reply before continuing. At the back of the camp, 3 dens built with thickets and ferns stood side by side, tucked among the rock. Peering inside the nearest den, she found Ice Paw curled up in a fluffy ball. His coat stood out against the darkness, accenting the pure white color. Gently, she nudged him awake and herded him towards the warrior's den with his eyes half closed. "What's going on?" he mumbled drowsily. Mottled Tuft brushed her tail over his back. "In a moment, Dove." The 5 cats in the warrior's den were all huddled together in a big pile to ward off the cold. Ice Paw padded over to join them without a word. He was used to visiting when it got too cold for him to sleep alone with no warm bodies to fend off the chill. Unfortunately, they weren't here to sleep. Carefully, Mottled Tuft circled the slumbering lump, nudging shoulders, licking ears, and brushing her tail across whiskers to wake them. Lynx Claw was still wide awake and only warming up by laying at the edge of the group. Weasel Nose grumbled and buried his face under his chest. Honey Mask woke with a quiet murp, and Maple Leaf parted her jaws in a wide yawn. Shadeheart's head shot up like she'd been woken by a bad dream. Mottle Tuft? What happened? The Black She-Cat demanded right away. Maple Leaf quietly started grooming Icepaw's fur, while Weasel Nose remained determined not to be awake. The Medicine Cat hesitated before deciding to rip the thorn out. Dofreckle has passed. The cats either froze in place or snapped to attention. The warm and comfortable atmosphere in the den was ruined by the fearful scents that quickly filled the space. Shadeheart's fur fluffed up like a startled porcupine. Honeymask's ears slowly dropped. When? Just now? Sometime between now and when I checked on her earlier, Mottle Tuft replied. So, she's in StarClan now, Icepaw mewed. Weasel Nose stared down at the ground. Yeah, she'll be in a better place now. Shadeheart suddenly shoved her way out of the den. Honeymask was quick to bound after her. Mottle Tuft was sure both she-cats were overwhelmed with grief. Shadeheart cared for Dofreckle more than anything, and Honeymask was very close to the both of them. What are we going to do now? Lynxclaw blurted. They were anxious, of course. How couldn't they be? They had all left the lives they'd known since they were young to follow Dofreckle. Mottle Tuft tried to purr comfortingly. She prepared us all for what to do when she was gone. We'll do our best to live up to the warrior code and her vision for RougeClan. Maple Leaf curled her tail around Icepaw and tucked his head under her chin. What about the other clans? They're so obsessed with warrior blood. Without Dofreckle, there is none in RougeClan, meaning it's less likely they'll accept us, Weasel Nose murmured. Whether they accept us or not doesn't matter. We all agreed to work together to survive, and by the ancient spirits, that's what we'll do, Mottle Tuft yowled, rising to her full height. Even if we have to fight tooth and claw for the rest of our lives, we'll earn the right to live how we please, not by someone else's standards, but by our own. Icepaw slipped out of his mentor's hold, his tail bouncing in excitement. Yeah, no cat can tell us what to do. That's not how it works, but sure, Weasel Nose meowed in amusement. Guys, Honeymask's dark cream head poked into the den. Can you come outside? Maple Leaf got to her paws. Is something wrong? Yes, but we all knew that already. Shadeheart wants to hold a meeting, she replied. After a few exchanged looks, each of them stood and quietly padded out of the den. There were clan rituals for the dead. Could that be what Shadeheart was up to? Dofreckle had taught Mottle Tuft about them some time ago, among other things. She always said that the Medicine Cat was just as important as the clan leader. A nervous shiver ran up her spine as she recalled the stories of prophetic dreams and visions, messages from long-dead ancestors to warn of danger. Nothing like that had happened to her yet, but never say never. With the light of the waxing moon shining through the camp entrance, Shadeheart was carefully carrying Dofreckle's body to the center of the clearing. She lowered the still she-cat to the ground with great care and stepped back a few paces. The rest of the clan gathered around quietly. It was one thing to hear a cat had died, and another entirely to see with your own eyes. Mottle Tuft knew all too well. Lynxclaw couldn't look directly at her. Weasel Nose had no such hang-ups. Probably wasn't his first time. Icepaw stared with owl-wide eyes, while Maple Leaf failed to distract him. Thankfully, Shadeheart broke the prolonged silence by drawing in a long, deep breath. Cats of RougeClan, I have gathered you all for a clan meeting. Mottle Tuft's ears pricked up in shock. Those were close to the words leaders used to address the clan. Tonight, we mourn the loss of the cat that brought us all here. Even without her, we are still a clan, so we will honor her like one. It's custom to hold a vigil for a fallen clanmate. We will share tongues with Dofreckle one last time, then spend the rest of the night by her side in silence. When the sun rises, Mottle Tuft and I will carry her body to the burial grounds, she explained, keeping her voice level and strong, but the grief showed through in her eyes. The warriors hesitated, unsure and not used to any of this. So, holding her head high, Mottle Tuft settled herself in the cool dirt beside Dofreckle's still form. She purred softly, and gave her side a few careful licks before resting her head there. Honeymask followed her example, then Weasel Nose, Maple Leaf, and Icepaw. Lynxclaw curled up at Dofreckle's flank, leaving Shadeheart to settle beside her head. The large black she-cat reached down to press their foreheads together. For the rest of the night, they kept her warm. Mottle Tuft couldn't help but think that the camp was far colder than it should have been. Her mind wandered as the time passed. Dofreckle had been the unofficial leader, but even when she was sick, they hadn't dared to ask who would succeed her. Even Modeltuft had wanted to pretend that the dear young cat would recover, even when she knew better. She'd been caring for sick and injured cats long before she joined the clan, wandering about the forest collecting herbs and carrying them in her pelt. The deaths of cats in her care never got easier. Pressing her face into Dofreckle's fur, Modeltuft cursed whatever caused the she-cat to be born with such weak lungs. Be it her lineage, an injury, luck, fate, or the design of long-dead cats who kept sticking their noses into the lives of their descendants. She let her anger and heartbreak fill up her mind and heart until her head throbbed, her chest ached, and the intensity of her emotions fizzled out. After letting herself rest for a while, she started to feel the warmth of dawn. The cats around her began to stir. "It's time for dawn patrol," Honey Mask boldly pointed out. Shadeheart lifted her head and nodded. "Go about your day now." Getting to her paws, the young she-cat gestured for Maple Leaf and Icepaw to follow her, and the three silently padded off. With a soft sigh, Weaselnose stood and led Ligsquaw away as well. Modeltuft watched Shadeheart gaze down at Dofreckle's still form a moment longer. Her legs and back were terribly stiff by now, but that could wait. She was worried about how well Shadeheart would take this. The she-cat wasn't that much younger than Modeltuft, and lived a much more difficult life. It was never good to jump to conclusions in her line of work, but ignoring a strong hunch was worse. She had to watch her own teacher lose his mind as he aged, and witnessed much younger cats suffer with unknown ailments. It was clear that Shadeheart was causing herself way too much stress. The constant alertness that kept her alive this long was turning into overthinking and anxiety. Modeltuft had been trying to keep her in camp as much as possible to keep an eye on her and convince her to rest. It had helped, until Dofreckle's condition got worse. Perhaps now she'd take the proper time to grieve, spend a few days taking it easy in her nest. That might do her some good. The sudden movement beside her as Shadeheart stood nearly made her jump. Modeltuft quickly followed her lead and pushed her musings aside for now. Shadeheart carefully fastened her teeth onto Dofreckle's scruff and lifted her up as far as she could. Modeltuft ducked under her belly to support the back end of the lifeless cat over her shoulders. They shared a silent look, and then trekked out of the cave. The snow was half melted and soggy under their paws. The cold seemed to zip up through Modeltuft's pads and invade her entire body. As unpleasant as the feeling was, it gave her system a much-needed jolt. The two senior cats carried their young friend away from the camp and up a nearby slope. The burial site they had marked out some time ago was a good few fox lengths away, at the top of a small rise where the trees and underbrush parted, creating an open space. The ground was soft, making the task of digging easier. Silently they went about their work, clearing away the wet snow and grass, scraping potfuls of cool earth away until they had a Dofreckle-sized hole. Together, they lifted the brown-ticked tabby once again and lowered her inside. Shadeheart paused, standing over the grave and staring inside. It looked like she'd just laid down in the hole herself, like she was trying to escape the hot rays of Greenleaf's sun by basking in the freshly uncovered earth. Modeltuft's nearly frozen paws reminded her that Greenleaf was some way off still. Reaching down, Shadeheart gave Dofreckle one last lick on the ear, then pushed the first potful of dirt over her. Her senses returning to the present, Modeltuft followed her lead. Filling the hole seemed to have taken longer than digging it. When it was finally done, Shadeheart retrieved a smooth stone off a pile that was collected from the river. She placed it right in the center of the disturbed earth and slowly backed away. The first step was done. Dofreckle was laid to rest. Now they had to get back to the clan and decide what was next. They had gone long enough without a leader. A decision needed to be made before sunset so they could prepare for the trip to the Moon Hollow. Modeltuft, Shadeheart suddenly meowed. How far is it to the hollow? She considered for a moment. Well, it's all the way on the other side of RougeClan territory. That means crossing the Thunderpath and the river. Almost a full day and then some. We'll have to leave early then, Shadeheart murmured. What? Modeltuft blinked in confusion. Squaring her shoulders, the dark she-cat replied with a firm voice. Not long before she died, Dofreckle told me that she wanted me to be the leader of RougeClan. Modeltuft's tail bristled. Was that really wise? There was no doubt that Shadeheart was the most knowledgeable and experienced in the clan, but she was not sociable. She didn't have much of a bond with the other cats besides Honeymask, and she didn't know how to settle conflicts. Not to mention, being leader would only stress her further, which was the last thing she needed right now. Licking her chest, she asked, "Is that what you want?" Shadeheart's gray eyes flashed like storm clouds. "I want what Dofreckle wants. That means keeping this clan alive." That hunch Mottletoft had was getting stronger by the day.